morning. Today we're going to talk about multiplying with decimals, and our goal is to understand how to multiply a whole number times a decimal, and I even squeezed in one decimal times a decimal, and work out how to place the decimal point so that the answer is correct. Now, for just a moment, I want you to think about long multiplication. We did that in the fall. We revisited it lots of times. Multiplying with decimals follows that same long multiplication format. So you are going to build on to what you already know about multiplying. And I have a set of 4 steps. There's 2 different ways that you can do this, and I'm going to teach both of them. I'm going to start with the way that I like the best, which I call the common sense method. And then I'll move on to the method that your parents might have learned so that we can kind of see how they blend together. So the first thing you do is you line up your problem vertically. So you set it up for long multiplication. And then the second thing you do is you multiply, just like you already know how to do, and you just ignore the decimals to begin with. So and then the third thing you're going to do is estimate your answer. And then the fourth thing you're going to do is you're going to think about that estimate and you're going to place the decimal in the space that makes the most sense. So that's why it kind of fits to call it the common sense method. So let's run through a few examples and see how that looks in action. So my problem is already lined up vertically. And the next thing I do is I multiply. So 7 times 2 is 14. Carry the 1, which is in the 10th place. Then 7 times 3 is 21, plus that 1 more that was the carry makes 22. All right, you already knew how to multiply. Now comes estimate the answer. So here we go back and we look at that. And we say, wait, what were we really dealing with here? Really, 3 2/10 is almost the same as 3, and it's times 7. So our answer is going to be close to 21. So now we come down here and we get ready to draw in the decimal. And we have some choices. We could put the decimal here, and then we would have 224 thousandths. Is that close to 21? I don't think so. We could put the decimal point here, then we have 2 24 hundredths. Well, that still seems a little small when we're aiming for 21. We could put the decimal point here, and we would have 22 4 tenths. Now, so far, that's the closest to 21. Our last place we could put the decimal would be here. That's 224. That's way bigger than 21. So common sense says this decimal point needs to go at 22 4 tenths. All right, problem number 1, all done. Let's look at problem number 2. Line up the problem vertically. That's already done. Multiply ignoring the decimals. Let's do it. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. 6 times 5 is 30. Now, we look at the numbers in the problem. 5 3/100ths is pretty close to just 5. Whenever it's hundredths, I like to think of it like money. And so I would think, $5.03. That's pretty much $5. So we have 5 times 6. So that makes the answer need to be right around 30. So now I'm going to go through, too small, too small. Oh, there I get 30. That's where I'm going to place my decimal point. Okay, this last problem, this is like a bonus problem because it's a decimal multiplied by a decimal. And this is a weird little animal. Like if we were going to put it in the math zoo, it's a multiplication problem that will end up with a smaller answer than the actual numbers you're multiplying. So That's the weird thing about decimals times decimals. So in this problem, we have 2.5 times a half, right? So let's go through, line up the problem vertically, multiply ignoring the decimals. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 more is 12. Now, I could multiply by this 0 here. I could say, oh, it's 1 space over in the place value mark. And then I could put some more zeros down because everything times 0 is 0. And ultimately, I would still have these same digits. So it's okay to cross these guys out in the future if you want to. All right, so our answer has a 1, a 2, and a 5. And now we have to ask ourselves that hard question about estimating. So to me, I like that fraction-y look. So I have 2.5, and I have a half of 1/2 of 2.5. So 1/2 of 2.5, or 1/2 times 2.5. I know that if I just did 1/2 of 2, I'd have 1, right? So somehow our answer is going to be in between 1 and 2.5. It can't be bigger than 2.5 if you're asking for a half of it, right? So my answer is going to be somewhere in this zone right here. So now I'm looking at this number and I'm thinking, how can I get these 3 digits? How can I place my decimal so that I have a number that's in between 1 and 2.5? And if I put my decimal point way out here, this is smaller than 1, so it won't work. Here I get 1 and 25/100ths, that works. Then the next one over would be 12.5, that's way too big. All right, so this one is special. Decimals times decimals make an answer smaller than the 2 digits, or the 2 numbers you're multiplying by. Okay, so now I told you before I was going to teach you a second way to do it. The second way I call the space, could you be quiet? The space counting method. The space counting method, we do the same thing as up here. Line up the problem vertically. I already did that. Multiply ignoring the decimals. I am going to do that now. It looks the same. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. Plus 1 more is 22. Well, turned out the same there. Now we have the 2 differences. This one, you count the spaces to the right of the decimal point in the problem. In this case, there's 1. And then you make sure that your answer has, it's matched up. It has 1 space from the decimal point. Okay, so in this case, it would be here. So you count 1, and then you count 1, and then you put your decimal point. All right, let's try it again. 18, that's gonna be 8, there's 30. All right, so then we say 1, 2 behind the decimal point here. Let me circle those so we don't get them mixed up. So we count 1, 2, and we put the decimal point in. Matches up. Good, okay. And then this last one, watch this carefully. 1, 2. So we can do our 25 and 1 and 2. Okay, and we have 125, but we have to count 1, 2 spaces behind the decimal point, so that puts us here. 1 and 25/100ths. Okay? So today, you are going to work in your Math in Focus Math Journal Volume 2. You're going to solve problems on pages 15 through 20. There are going to be some places where they break these problems down into little parts. I am convinced that you will be fine with that. But if the little parts drive you crazy, you can skip the parts and just solve the problems on the side the way that I have allowed in the past. And I hope that you have a great time doing your math today. Thank you.